I knew something was wrong the moment he slammed the door behind him. His footsteps were sharp, impatient, like he was rehearsing a fight before I even opened my mouth. And when he finally looked at me, his eyes carried a kind of righteousness that only a guilty man wears. That's when he said it. He wanted to bring her into our home. His ex, the woman who shattered him years ago, the woman he swore he no longer thought about. Now, suddenly weak, ill, vulnerable, and calling him out of all people? He said she had no one, said he couldn't leave her like that, said it like he was announcing some noble sacrifice. I remember staring at him, my heartbeat slow and steady, while the world inside me cracked like thin glass. But I didn't yell, I didn't accuse. I simply asked, "Why did she contact you after all these years?" He flinched, just for a second, a twitch behind the mask. Then came the anger. Too fast, too loud, too practiced. "You're being jealous," he snapped, "immature. A real partner would understand." That was the moment I knew. Not because he defended her, but because he needed me to feel small to justify what he'd already decided to do. Backstory bleeds like an old wound. He wasn't always this version of himself. There was a time he looked at me like I was the first steady thing in his life. A time he couldn't sleep without my hand in his. A time he swore he'd never let the past crawl back into our future. I believed him. God, I believed him so easily. But betrayal never arrives with fireworks. It shows up quietly, disguised as kindness, obligation, nostalgia. It started with the late-night messages he didn't want me to see, the way he angled his phone, the new pauses in his sentences, the sudden distance between us in bed, like even his body was drifting elsewhere. Then I saw it. Her name lighting up his screen, the preview of a message soft and intimate. I knew you'd still care. That was the undeniable evidence. Not the words, not the timing, but the expression on his face when he read it. That soft, private grief I wasn't invited into. I felt heartbreak bloom inside my chest, slow and poisonous. But I didn't confront him, not yet. When trust breaks, some people crumble. I calculate. I started watching him the way you study a locked door, quietly, patiently, knowing eventually it reveals what's behind it. He thought I was being understanding. I let him think that. I let him breathe easy while I crafted my next steps. Because revenge isn't loud, it's silent, like the tightening of a snare. First, I met with a lawyer. Not out of impulse, out of preparation. Because if he wanted to resurrect past ghosts, he could do it on his side of the line. We drafted everything. Asset division, house rights, financial protections, all legal, all neatly signed, all timed. Then I made my move. I suggested he help her from a distance, a test he failed instantly. He wanted her here, under our roof, under my silence, under my tolerance. He didn't know I was recording the conversation, didn't know I captured the part where he said he owed her, or the part where he said he couldn't let her suffer alone, or the part where he admitted she had reached out months ago, long before he told me. That recording became evidence, not for court, for truth. The climax came 3 days later. He walked in with a suitcase and a plan. I waited for him in the living room, documents on the table, calm as a surgeon. He barely noticed at first, just kept rambling about rearranging the guest room. "Sit," I said. My voice didn't rise. It didn't have to. He sat. Eventually, slowly, like his body already sensed what his mind refused to acknowledge. I slid the signed separation papers across the table. His face drained, then twisted, then collapsed. "What is this?" he whispered. "My boundary," I said, "and your consequence." I showed him the recording, the messages, the timeline, the lies. Piece by piece, I handed him the truth he'd tried so hard to bury. His downfall wasn't dramatic. He didn't scream, didn't threaten. He simply sagged in his seat, realizing he'd built an entire fantasy where I would tolerate being second to a woman who didn't even want him until she needed something. He wanted to bring her here? Fine. But the house was no longer his to bring anyone into. He left with the same suitcase he intended for her. And me? I didn't feel triumphant, not giddy, just grounded, clear, like I had finally stepped out of a room where the air had been thinning for years. Maybe he thinks I'm the villain, maybe she does too. But I'm not the jerk for refusing to shrink myself to make space for his past. I'm just the woman who stopped pretending betrayal was love.